Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Epstein-related legislation seeks transparency. Trump's Ukraine peace proposal fuels debate. Violence escalates in Gaza and southern Lebanon. Mexico faces continued criminal violence. Alaska receives life sentence for human trafficking. Nnamdi Kanu is sentenced to life for terrorism. Ryan Wedding faces drug trafficking charges. India-Bangladesh ties strained by Hasina's conviction. U.S. arms sale indicates easing trade tensions with India. Turkey will host COP31 after compromise with Australia. U.S. Congress investigates Australian internet regulator. Suspect in Nord Stream case to be extradited to Germany. Russian spy ship used lasers against RAF pilots. Kamran Hekmati remains imprisoned in Iran. Larry Summers and Plaskett face scrutiny over Epstein connections. Epstein files legislation, a complex path to transparency. The passage of legislation granting access to the Department of Justice's records pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell marks a significant, yet potentially protracted, step toward transparency. The law, now enacted, mandates the release of all unclassified DOJ records, including manifests, itineraries, and related documentation, within 30 days. However, the process is laden with potential delays and restrictions due to carefully worded provisions. The immediate reaction has been characterized by cautious optimism, tempered by concerns about potential manipulation. Attorney General Pam Bondi's initial promises of full disclosure have been met with skepticism, having previously released limited documents. The recent demand for an investigation led by Trump, focusing on figures like Bill Clinton and Larry Summers, raises questions about the scope and motivations behind the release. A key element of the legislation allows for the withholding of information if it jeopardizes active federal investigations or prosecutions. This provision, coupled with restrictions on disclosing personal identifiable information or depictions of child sexual abuse, significantly limits the immediate availability of documents. Furthermore, the law permits withholding classified material or information deemed vital to national defense or foreign policy. The 30-day timeframe for release is subject to these constraints, suggesting a phased approach rather than a wholesale disclosure. The potential for ongoing investigations, spearheaded by Trump, adds another layer of complexity, potentially diverting resources and delaying the release of key documents. The legislation's language emphasizes a commitment to transparency while acknowledging the need to protect victims and national security. The investigation demanded by Trump and the DOJ's subsequent launch highlights the ongoing struggle to balance public access with the sensitive nature of the case. The ultimate outcome remains uncertain, dependent on the DOJ's interpretation and application of the law, and the results of any ongoing investigations. New Trump peace proposal for Ukraine sparks debate. A new peace proposal drafted by Donald Trump's administration, spearheaded by Steve Witkoff, aims to resolve the Ukraine conflict, but it's generating considerable controversy due to its echoes of previously rejected Russian demands. The plan envisions Ukraine ceding the eastern Donbass region and reducing the size of its military, including certain weaponry provided by Western allies. This proposal, circulated among U.S. officials, has prompted immediate reactions from Ukraine and its supporters, who view it as a non-starter due to its repetition of maximalist demands. Several key entities are involved: Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Western allies. The proposal's inclusion of territorial concessions, particularly in the Donbass, is a significant point of contention. The plan's emergence has also highlighted a lack of communication within the U.S. government, with officials expressing surprise and confusion regarding the initiative. The proposal's resurgence follows a similar effort in 2022, indicating a renewed willingness from Russia to engage in negotiations. However, the plan's core elements demands for Ukraine to relinquish control of strategically important regions and curtail its military capabilities remain deeply problematic for Kyiv. European diplomats and officials have expressed strong reservations, emphasizing the need for Ukrainian and European involvement in any potential peace agreement. Concerns have been raised about the potential for the plan to simply pave the way for a future Russian invasion. A Pentagon delegation, led by Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, recently concluded discussions with Zelensky in Kyiv, further fueling the debate. The U.S. administration's attempt to restart peace talks comes amid ongoing military activity and a stalemate in the conflict. The situation remains fluid, with no immediate resolution in sight. Escalating violence in Gaza and southern Lebanon trigger renewed conflict. Recent days have witnessed a significant escalation of violence in Gaza and southern Lebanon, marked by intensified Israeli strikes and retaliatory actions. At least 57 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, including 12 children and 8 women, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, with a total death toll since the ceasefire reached 312. These strikes, primarily targeting Hamas operatives and infrastructure, followed a violation of the ceasefire agreement when Israeli soldiers were attacked in Khan Yunis. The Israeli Defense Forces (IDF) attributed these attacks to a deliberate attempt to destabilize the fragile truce. The IDF conducted multiple airstrikes across Gaza, notably in the Zaytun area, resulting in 10 fatalities, including a woman and child. These strikes also targeted a UNRWA club, where a group of civilians were reportedly located. Simultaneously, Israel launched strikes in southern Lebanon, targeting what it described as Hezbollah weapons storage facilities and a Hamas training compound. These actions followed an Israeli strike in Lebanon that resulted in 13 deaths. The conflict is rooted in the ongoing conflict following the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel, which resulted in over 200 deaths. The U.S. brokered ceasefire framework, which included Hamas releasing all remaining hostages in exchange for a phased withdrawal of Israeli forces, and the release of Palestinian prisoners, has been repeatedly disrupted by further attacks. Despite the initial implementation of the framework, including the release of all hostages, the violence has continued, demonstrating the deep-seated complexities of the situation. The U.S. brokered ceasefire framework has been repeatedly disrupted by further attacks, demonstrating the deep-seated complexities of the situation. The IDF's actions are consistently framed as responses to violations of the ceasefire and attempts to prevent future attacks. Both sides accuse the other of attempting to undermine the fragile peace. The conflict continues to inflict a heavy toll on civilian populations in both Gaza and southern Lebanon, highlighting the urgent need for a sustainable resolution. Two separate murders highlight Mexico's criminal violence. Two separate investigations and trials have emerged in Mexico, revealing a disturbing pattern of violence and criminal activity. In the first case, a security minister confirmed the arrest of George Amando, also known as the Graduate, in connection with the murder of Uruapan Mayor Carlos Manzo. Manzo, a vocal critic of cartel violence, was shot dead during a Day of the Dead ceremony. The arrest marks a key step in dismantling the criminal structure responsible for the attack, linked to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. The assassination triggered mass protests, with demonstrators carrying images of Manzo and demanding greater government action against the cartel. The CJNG's activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, and targeting of public officials, remain a significant threat. In a parallel case, a woman, Ari Giselle, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for her involvement in the carjacking and murders of Australian surfer brothers, Callum and Jake Robinson, along with their American friend Carter Road. Giselle's actions included expressing interest in the surfer's vehicle and prompting her then-boyfriend, Jesus Gerardo, to pursue it. The victims were found shot dead at the bottom of a well following the robbery. Investigations revealed links between Jesus Gerardo and Ireneo Francisco with the powerful Sinaloa cartel, formerly led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Both men are currently held in maximum security prisons in Baja California. Despite prosecutors' assertions, there is no suspicion of organized crime involvement. The families of the victims delivered emotional testimonies, expressing the devastating loss of their loved ones and the shattered dreams associated with their futures. Callum Robinson, a member of Australia's national lacrosse team, and Jake Robinson, due to begin a medical career, were among those whose lives were tragically cut short. Carter Road, a San Diego resident and technology services employee, was months away from marrying. Giselle offered a tearful apology, acknowledging the irreparable harm caused. The cases underscore the ongoing challenges Mexico faces in combating organized crime and protecting its citizens. Alice Guo, sentenced to life for human trafficking in Philippines, a former businesswoman, Alice Guo, has been sentenced to life imprisonment in the Philippines following a conviction for human trafficking. The verdict, delivered on Thursday, stems from her involvement in operating one of the country's largest and most notorious scam centers located in the town of Bamban. Alongside Guo and 3 co-defendants, the court imposed a fine of 2 million pesos, 3033-8032, to 25942A. This case has held significant attention within the Philippines for several years, triggered by the discovery of the illicit operation. The investigation revealed that Guo was central to a network that exploited hundreds of Filipinos and foreign nationals. Victims reported being coerced into participating in pig butchering scams, a sophisticated fraud scheme designed to extract money from unsuspecting individuals. Following a raid, authorities rescued approximately 800 people from the scam hub. Alice Guo had been evading authorities for weeks prior to her arrest last year. Despite the conviction, she has consistently denied the accusations against her. The legal proceedings are ongoing, with 5 additional cases against Guo currently under investigation, including one concerning alleged money laundering activities. The sentencing represents a major victory for Philippine law enforcement and highlights the ongoing efforts to combat transnational crime and exploitation. The case underscores the vulnerability of individuals to deceptive schemes and the importance of international cooperation in addressing these types of illicit operations. Further legal action remains pending as investigators continue to explore the full extent of GU's involvement and the network's operations. Nnamdi Kanu sentenced to life for terrorism. Nigerian separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu has been sentenced to 4 life sentences, alongside other concurrent terms, following a decade-long legal battle. The verdict, delivered by Judge James Omotosho, found him guilty of terrorism, treason, and involvement with the outlawed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. The prosecution had initially sought the death penalty, but the judge deemed executions unacceptable. Kanu's conviction stems from accusations of inciting violence and killings through broadcasts promoting a separate state, Biafra, primarily within southeast Nigeria. He was absent from the courtroom during the delivery of the verdict, having been removed due to disruptive behavior. Kanu's rise to prominence began in 2009 with the launch of Radio Biafra, broadcast from London, advocating for Igbo independence. He established IPOB in 2014, subsequently banned as a terrorist organization in 2017 due to the activities of its armed wing, the Eastern Security Network, which has been linked to violence. The legal proceedings against Kanu involved multiple arrests, bail jumps, and international travel, culminating in his forceful return to Nigeria from Kenya in 2022, following a Supreme Court reversal of a previous ruling regarding his arrest abroad. The calls for Biafran independence, rooted in historical grievances and perceived marginalization of the Igbo people, have a long history, dating back to 1967 when Igbo leaders declared a Biafran state, leading to a devastating civil war. Despite the defeat of the secessionist rebellion, many Igbo individuals continue to harbor feelings of marginalization. Security was heightened around the Abuja courthouse in anticipation of potential protests by Kanu supporters. The judge emphasized Kanu's awareness of his actions and failure to provide a defense, highlighting the gravity of the charges. The legal team argued that proceedings were premature, accusing the judge of bias. The case remains a complex and contentious issue with significant implications for Nigeria's stability and future. Ryan Wedding, former Olympic snowboarder, charged in extensive drug trafficking operation, federal authorities have dramatically escalated their pursuit of Ryan James Wedding, a former Olympic snowboarder, now accused of leading a prolific international drug trafficking operation. The investigation, spanning multiple countries including Canada, Mexico, Colombia, and the United States, has resulted in numerous arrests and a significant increase in the reward offered for his capture. Wedding is currently wanted by the FBI's 10 most wanted list and is believed to be operating under the protection of the Sinaloa drug cartel in Mexico. The core of the investigation centers around allegations that Wedding orchestrated the murder of a federal witness in Colombia, paying $10,000 to a website, The Dirty News, to disseminate the witness's image and incite a search. The witness was subsequently shot and killed in Medellin, Colombia, in January. Wedding has been formally charged with murder, witness tampering, intimidation, money laundering, and drug trafficking. Authorities have identified a network of individuals involved, including Deepak Balwant Paradkar, a Canadian lawyer, who is accused of advising Wedding and his accomplice to commit the murder to avoid extradition. Paradkar is alleged to have provided a range of illegal services to Wedding's organization, facilitated by luxury watches and additional fees. 7 Canadians have been arrested and are slated for extradition to the United States, charged with conspiracy to commit murder and drug trafficking. The operation is believed to have shipped vast quantities of cocaine from Colombia and Mexico into the US and Canada, generating an estimated annual revenue of over $100 billion. Wedding's organization is responsible for the deaths of 4 individuals, including a Canadian family mistakenly targeted in retaliation for a stolen drug shipment. The investigation has resulted in the arrest of at least a dozen other individuals across multiple jurisdictions, further highlighting the scale of the alleged operation. The State Department has raised the reward for information, leading to Wedding's arrest from $10 million to $15 million, demonstrating the seriousness with which authorities are pursuing his capture. Hasina's conviction tests India-Bangladesh ties. The recent conviction of Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh's former leader, for crimes against humanity following a student-led uprising, presents a significant diplomatic challenge for India-Bangladesh relations. The 2024 protests forced Hasina to flee, leading to Muhammad Yunus's interim government. India's reluctance to extradite Hasina, viewed as a close friend, is creating a tense situation. Delhi faces 4 unappealing options: extradition as unthinkable, maintaining the status quo, risky with a new government, pressuring Hasina to remain silent, unlikely, or seeking a third country to host her a complex undertaking. The India-Bangladesh relationship is deeply intertwined, characterized by substantial trade, nearly $13 billion in 2023, with Bangladesh running a significant deficit reliant on Indian raw materials and energy. India has provided $810 billion in concessional credit, duty-free access, and infrastructure projects, including cross-border rail links and electricity supply. This interdependence is underscored by shared water resources and electricity needs, making Bangladesh critically reliant on India's cooperation. However, UNIS's interim government is actively recalibrating external ties, moving away from a heavily India-aligned foreign policy through diplomatic outreach, renegotiating energy deals, slowing India-led connectivity projects, and seeking partnerships with China, Pakistan, and Turkey. Public sentiment in Bangladesh has shifted, with over 75% viewing China positively compared to just 11% for India, reflecting dissatisfaction with perceived Indian overreach. Despite historical, economic, and cultural ties, which have endured through political shifts, the current situation is causing concern for India, particularly regarding counterterrorism, border management, and access to its northeastern region, which shares a 4,906 km border with Bangladesh. Experts advise a patient, quiet diplomatic approach, engaging with key stakeholders in Dhaka, including the armed forces, to manage the fallout and maintain stability. The path forward requires careful navigation of a complex and evolving relationship. U.S. arms sale to India signals easing trade tensions, and the United States has approved a significant $902.8 million arms sale to India, reflecting a strategic shift in defense partnerships and a gradual easing of trade tensions between the two nations. This approval, announced by the U.S. Department of State's Defense Security Cooperation Agency (DSK), includes the sale of Javelin anti-tank missiles and Excalibur precision artillery projectiles, bolstering India's military capabilities. The move comes as India actively seeks to diversify its arms supply, reducing its reliance on Russia, a historically dominant supplier. This development follows a framework agreement signed in October outlining expanded defense cooperation over the next 10 years, initiated after a meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and former President Donald Trump in Washington. The Trump administration had encouraged India to increase its purchases of U.S.-made weapons, contributing to the growing trade relationship. Between 2017 and 2023, India's defense trade with the U.S. has surged from near zero to an impressive $10 billion, elevating the U.S. to its third-largest arms supplier, trailing only Russia and France. The DSKA stated the sales would improve India's capability to meet current and future threats. The $45.7 million Javelin missile system sale encompasses 100 rounds, a fly-to-buy missile, and 25 lightweight command launch units, alongside simulation rounds, trainers, spare parts, and technical assistance. Separately, a $47.1 million sale includes up to 216 N82A1 Excalibur tactical projectiles, fire control systems, primers, propellant charges, technical data, and repair services. The DSKA emphasized that India would have no difficulty absorbing the equipment. This development coincides with efforts to resolve trade tensions that arose when Trump imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods, including a 25% penalty for buying Russian oil and arms. These tensions appear to be diminishing, allowing for renewed cooperation. The U.S. views India as an important force for political stability, peace, and economic progress within the Indo-Pacific and South Asia, further solidifying the strategic alliance. The overall sale underscores a deliberate move by the U.S. to strengthen its security relationship with India amidst a changing geopolitical landscape. Turkey to host COP31 following Australia-Turkey compromise. After protracted negotiations at COP30 in Belém, Brazil, Turkey has been confirmed as the host nation for the 2026 Climate Summit, COP31. This decision emerged following a significant compromise between Turkey and Australia, resolving a dispute over the right to host the annual event. Initially, Australia had bid to host COP31, advocating for a co-hosting arrangement with Pacific Island states, highlighting their vulnerability to climate change. However, Turkey, having stood aside in 2021 to allow the UK to host COP26 in Glasgow, had also presented a strong bid for Antalya. The compromise involves Australia supporting Turkey's bid, in exchange for Turkey's climate minister, Chris Bowen, assuming the role of COP31 president. This arrangement was met with mixed reactions. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese described the outcome as an outstanding result, emphasizing the importance of addressing Pacific Island concerns. Conversely, Papua New Guinea's Foreign Minister Justin Tkachenko expressed disappointment, stating that not all countries were satisfied with the resolution. Similarly, Solomon Islands leader Jeremiah Manel voiced his disappointment regarding Australia's inability to secure the event. To further demonstrate a commitment to climate action, A pre-COP meeting has been scheduled on a Pacific island, signifying a priority for vulnerable nations. The shift in leadership to Chris Bowen is intended to ensure a focused discussion on climate change issues, particularly those affecting the Pacific region. The resolution marks a departure from the traditional host country presidency model and represents a strategic realignment within the UN's climate negotiations framework, aiming to prioritize the most impacted regions, while Turkey takes the lead in facilitating the discussions. This arrangement reflects a pragmatic approach to international collaboration in tackling the global climate crisis. U.S. Congress questions Australian internet regulators' actions. U.S. Republican Congressman Jim Jordan has requested that Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julie Imman-Grant, appear before the U.S. Congress by December 2nd, citing concerns about her enforcement of Australia's Online Safety Act, OSA, and its potential impact on free speech in America. Jordan has characterized Imman-Grant as a noted zealot for global takedowns, raising serious objections to her extraterritorial jurisdiction claims. The core of the dispute centers on the OSA's ability to compel American companies, such as Elon Musk's X platform, to remove content globally, particularly concerning instances like the live-streamed Sydney church stabbing. Imman-Grant's role is primarily focused on enforcing Australian law, accountable to Australia's Minister for Communications and the Australian Parliament. She argues that her actions are solely directed at addressing illegal content within Australia's borders. However, Jordan contends that her enforcement practices represent a broader attempt at global censorship, specifically referencing the case against X regarding the Sydney stabbing videos. This case resulted in X refusing to comply, leading to its withdrawal of the videos from global users, despite threats of substantial fines. Jordan's request for Imman-Grant's testimony highlights concerns about the potential for governments to exert undue influence over online content globally, arguing that such actions infringe upon the free speech rights of individuals outside of Australia's jurisdiction. He further expressed concern regarding Imman-Grant's speech at Stanford University, accusing her of troubling statements and past efforts to censor lawful American speech. The situation underscores a growing international debate surrounding content moderation, digital sovereignty, and the balance between online safety and freedom of expression. The upcoming congressional hearing is expected to be a significant event in this ongoing discussion, with potential ramifications for internet governance and cross-border legal disputes. Nord Stream suspect to be extradited to Germany. Italy's top appeals court has ordered the extradition of Serhiy Kuznetsov, a Ukrainian man, to Germany to face charges of anti-constitutional sabotage related to the 2022 attack on the Nord Stream gas pipelines. The decision, announced 17 hours ago, signifies a significant development in the ongoing investigation into the destruction of the pipelines, which run between Russia and Germany under the Baltic Sea. Prosecutors believe Kuznetsov coordinated and led a group responsible for planting explosives, though specific evidence has not been disclosed. The extradition is expected to occur within the coming days under German police escort following the court's ruling. Kuznetsov's lawyer, Nicola Canestrini, contends that his client is being treated as a scapegoat and expresses dismay over the lack of support from the Ukrainian government, stating they possess information regarding his whereabouts during the critical period of September 2022. He questions why the Ukrainian government hasn't refuted his innocence or affirmed his status as a serving army captain. Kuznetsov was arrested in late August at a glamping site near Rimini, Italy, where he was vacationing with his family. His arrest was facilitated through Italy's automatic transfer of passport information to local police. The Ukrainian government has not commented on the situation, further fueling concerns about his defense. The case carries considerable implications for relations between Ukraine and Germany, given Germany's substantial military aid to Kiev. The investigation continues, and the extradition marks a key step in seeking accountability for the attack on the critical energy infrastructure. The legal proceedings will undoubtedly be closely watched as they unfold, impacting international relations and the ongoing geopolitical landscape. Russian spy ship uses lasers against RAF pilots. The UK government is taking extremely seriously a recent incident where a Russian spy ship, the Yantar, used lasers to disrupt RAF pilots tracking its movements near UK waters. Defense Secretary John Healey stated that the move, occurring within the last 2 weeks, was deeply dangerous, and that the government was ready if the Yantar travels south this week. The Yantar, operated by Russia's main directorate for deep-sea research GUGI, which is designed for surveillance and potential sabotage, has been repeatedly spotted in UK waters, most recently in January. The Yantar's activity has raised significant concerns, particularly regarding its potential to map undersea cables, a mission suspected by Western nations. The ship's lack of location broadcasts since November 6th and its last track position in the Baltic Sea north of Latvia are also alarming. The Dutch Navy recently escorted the Yantar out of the North Sea. RAF Poseidon P-8 surveillance planes have been circling off the Scottish coast, although it's not confirmed they are directly tracking the Yantar. The Ministry of Defense has changed Royal Navy rules of engagement to allow closer monitoring when the Yantar is within wider UK waters. The use of lasers represents a significant escalation, impeding pilot operations and posing a direct threat to military aircraft. Concerns extend beyond the immediate incident to encompass the broader risk to critical infrastructure, including undersea cables and pipelines. Russia has dismissed the UK's warnings as baseless anti-Russian alarmism, while security analysts highlight the provocative nature of the laser use. The UK and its NATO allies are increasingly worried about Russian incursions into NATO airspace and the potential for attacks on infrastructure. The Ministry of Defense is facing scrutiny for its reliance on US defense resources and is being urged to accelerate its commitment to NATO, a concern echoed by a committee of MPs. The UK government maintains a different perspective on America's commitment to NATO, but acknowledges the need to pick up the pace of its own contribution, a priority Labour has been addressing since taking power. The Defense Secretary emphasized the changing, unpredictable, and increasingly dangerous global landscape. Kamran Hekmati remains detained in Iran following 13-year sentence. Kamran Hekmati, an Iranian-American Jewish man, remains imprisoned in Iran's notorious Evin prison after being arrested 13 years ago for visiting Israel. The 70-year-old, who has previously traveled to Iran with his family, is not involved in politics, according to his family. His current detention is linked to a trip he took in 2010 to attend his son's bar mitzvah in Israel. Despite his age and suffering from bladder cancer, Hekmati was stopped at the airport in May while attempting to return to New York. Iranian authorities seized his passport and conducted a thorough search of his phone and social media accounts. Following this, he was prevented from leaving the country and subjected to interrogation. The arrest occurred around the time of the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. Initially, Hekmati received a 4-year prison sentence under a law prohibiting Iranian passport holders from traveling to Israel. However, the punishment was later reduced to 2 years after a legal change was implemented. He has been denied legal representation during his imprisonment. The United States lacks a diplomatic presence in Iran, and Switzerland, which represents U.S. interests, has been restricted from accessing Hekmati. This lack of access has heightened concerns about his well-being and the possibility of receiving adequate medical care given his illness. Representative Tom Suozzi has called for the State Department to urgently work towards Hekmati's release, citing humanitarian grounds. He emphasized Hekmati's role as a respected member of his community, particularly within the Persian Jewish community on Long Island, and his service on the Zoning Board of Appeals. The State Department acknowledges the situation but, due to safety and privacy considerations, cannot comment on individual cases. They continue to engage with allies and partners regarding unjust detentions in Iran. The department's reluctance to provide specifics underscores the challenges in securing Hekmati's release and highlights the broader risks faced by U.S. citizens with connections to Iran. Hekmati's family continues to advocate for his immediate release, emphasizing his status as a loving father, grandfather, and husband. Larry Summers and Plaskett face scrutiny amid Epstein connections. Larry Summers has stepped back from all public commitments following the release of emails detailing his sustained communication with Jeffrey Epstein until the day before Epstein's 2019 arrest. This action followed the disclosure of a tranche of emails by the House Oversight Committee, revealing Summers' frequent interactions with the convicted sex offender. Summers acknowledged taking full responsibility for these misguided decisions and expressed a desire to rebuild trust. He resigned from the board of OpenAI, where he had joined in 2023, and severed ties with the Center for American Progress, where he previously served as a senior fellow. Despite his continued role as a professor at Harvard University, Summers has removed himself from public engagements. Simultaneously, Representative Mickey Plaskett faced a failed censure vote in the House of Representatives due to her communication with Epstein in 2019. The vote, triggered by the release of emails showing Plaskett's exchanges with the financier, highlighted the broader controversy surrounding high-profile figures' connections to Epstein. Plaskett responded to the failed vote with a statement emphasizing her commitment to seeking justice for victims and her determination to move forward. The vote underscored the significant political and legal ramifications stemming from the Epstein scandal. The House has agreed to pass a bill requiring the U.S. Justice Department to release its files on Epstein, which will then be reviewed by President Trump for approval. This move represents a significant step towards greater transparency surrounding the investigation into Epstein's activities. The ongoing scrutiny of individuals connected to Epstein continues to generate considerable political and legal attention, particularly concerning the potential for uncovering evidence of legal wrongdoing. The situation is rapidly evolving, with ongoing investigations and legal proceedings likely to further illuminate the complexities of this high-profile case.